I've had a great question in from Matt, not his real name, but I'm going to preserve his anonymity. And Matt is one of my mentoring clients, and I met him last August. He booked a one-on-one face-to-face consultation, and we were allowed to meet in August, so we met for 4 or 5 hours in a hotel. He already has some properties, but he wants to expand his portfolio. And he recently emailed me with a really good question, and I thought that I'd share this with everybody because we all have opinions on this, and this is something which we need to think about. He said, "Hi Peter, hope you're well. Just a quick note to see what your current thoughts are on the state of the housing market. Prices are crazy. I've been constantly viewing since our meeting last August and have luckily enough purchased 6. Well, 3 completed and 3 on the way to be completed. However, I have made the decision to stop viewing at present as it's manic out there and the competition is ferocious. Surely this mad feeding frenzy on property has to stop. Do you believe that competition for property will reduce in autumn when the artificial economy boosters furlough and stamp duty have stopped? I hope so, as the numbers are not stacking up at the minute and it's quite frustrating as I'm chomping at the bit to expand my portfolio. What are your thoughts on current market conditions and what they may look like in 6 months? I'd be very keen to get your opinion. Have you been viewing? Thanks Peter, all the best." Well, very interesting. Let me first sort of work backwards and say, yes, I have been viewing. I've been out viewing properties around Nottingham, which is where I live, and I agree, prices are crazy. As part of the process, as part of the exercise, I spent sort of like half a day going through Rightmove. I put together a short list of about 25 properties which I wanted to go and view, and by the time I rang the agents, which was the next day to book the appointments, about half of them had sold, and the rest just sold really quickly. So I can see exactly what Matt is saying. Prices as well have gone up a lot in Nottingham, so I can completely understand where he's coming from. Now, is this a surprise? Well, yes and no. Yes, because I've said in previous videos that because of the fundamentals at the moment in the economy, you wouldn't expect a property boom. But this is not part of the normal economic cycle, and this is the thing we really need to understand. This is not part of the normal economic cycle. What is happening at the moment is that the government are pumping up the property market. Why? Because with lockdown, because of the pandemic, large parts of the economy have to be put on ice. So things like the service sector, which includes hospitality and leisure, has all been brought to a complete halt, and the service sector is one of the largest parts of the UK economy. So the government have realised that what they need to do is to pump the property market because it's one of the few bits of the economy which they can boost and leave it running safely. They don't have to shut it down. Like, you can't have a pub because obviously there's transmission problems, but you can allow people to go out and view houses. If everybody is sensible, they wear a mask, the owners stand in the garden and all that kind of stuff, then we can carry on. So the property market they saw as a way of keeping the economy going. So the economy at the moment is being pumped, and this isn't a normal part of this cycle. This is artificial. So this begs the question. Now, I have to say, I was watching a video the other day by a fellow YouTuber, somebody who's been in property for a long time, and somebody for whom I have a great deal of respect. And they were saying basically that when we get to the autumn, once furlough and the stamp duty holiday is removed, then they think the property market will crash. But I have to say, although I hold this person in very high regard, respectfully, I'm going to disagree with them because I see it this way. Politicians ultimately are interested in votes, but let's not be cynical about this. Let's assume that they do want the country to prosper. And it's very hard to imagine that if we know that the property market will crash or go off a cliff edge, or however you want to describe it, in the autumn when furlough finishes and when the stamp duty holiday finishes, they must know that as well. And although they won't want the property market to boom forever, logic would suggest, it doesn't make any sort of sense to me to think that they'd be quite happy for it not just to stop booming, but to go into reverse and start declining, or even crashing. I mean, crashing is a very evocative, emotional word. Technically, I think the definition of a crash is reducing by 10%. I'm not sure about that, but I read that somewhere. That may or may not be true. But do they want the property market to go backwards in the autumn when the rest of the economy will only just be recovering? I would think not. So my guess, and it is only a guess because at the end of the day, do I have an answer? Well, not really, because I don't know any more than anybody else. I can't predict the future. But my guess would be that when we get to the autumn, the government aren't going to want the property market just to grind to a halt. So I suspect there could be some tweaking. Now, the thing is, they can't pay people's mortgages and rents. So, sadly, when furlough finishes, some people are going to be made redundant and they're going to not be able to keep their houses, or they're not going to be able to pay their rent. And all of that kind of stuff is going to have, unfortunately, a negative impact on the property market. But what can the government do? Well, they've brought in the scheme to help buyers by introducing the 95% mortgage. So that is obviously in place, and that is there, and that will be there in the autumn. So that will be a stimulus. What else could they do? Well, this is only a guess. I don't know they're going to do this, but my guess would be that when we get to the autumn, the stamp duty holiday, which by that time will have been halved, so instead of doing a nil band up to 500,000, it'll be a nil band up to 250,000. My guess would be they're probably going to keep that, because it's about time that stamp duty was sort of brought in line anyway. It's been lagging the economy, it's been lagging inflation, it's been lagging all the other indicators. So my guess is they'd probably keep that. So my view is this: I think that there's the possibility that the property market may slow down, but I wouldn't be surprised if something happens in the budget, and I think there's going to be a budget in the autumn, just to put things back on track. There was talk that the budget we've just had a month ago was a stimulus budget, and the next budget will be a taxation budget. And there may be a bit of give and take, but I think around property, we could well see something like the stamp duty holiday being extended, perhaps permanently, just to keep the property market stimulated. We will see. So, is the property market going to crash in the autumn? Probably not. It may slow down though, which means that it will not be going up as much, or we may just get to a net zero where supply and demand is in a balance. I don't think though we're going to see a situation where we have sort of -5 or -10% because there's more sellers than buyers. I think, as I say, that's something which the government will want to avoid. So would I buy property at the moment? Well, it all depends on the deal. And I said this in a previous video, that really you have to look at the deal that you're negotiating today, because the risk is that you could stop buying today in the expectation or hope that in 6 months or 12 months that values may drop 5% or 10%. But the reality is that over the next 6 to 12 months, they could potentially go up 5%. 10% is probably pushing it, but 5% I could quite easily see over the next 12 months, even if the market is slowing down a little bit, depending upon where you're buying. So you could wait in expectation of being able to buy a bargain, but it never actually happens. That is the risk. So if you can buy a property now, which is genuinely a good deal, a good bargain, then I'd probably still go for it. But bottom line is this: all markets go up and down. No markets ever go up forever. And at some point, of course, the property market will go down and there will be a correction. But that will be when it's back in line with the normal economic cycle. And at the moment, we're not in a place where we're having a normal economic cycle. Until the pandemic is fully resolved, until the government have finished trying to steer the economy through the pandemic, then we can't consider property to be in a normal economic cycle, which means basically all bets are off. Anything could happen. Come autumn, it could go up, it could go down, it could carry on as it is, it could look like it is, but just be slightly slower. So the answer I'm giving you is, I don't know. I've got no idea. But I wouldn't just assume that because there's going to be the end of furlough and potentially, in theory, the end of the stamp duty holiday, that means that the property market is going to decline. So what do you think? If you're watching this on Facebook or YouTube, let me know in the comments below what you think is going to happen. I hope you found this video useful and informative, and if you did, then please come over to my website www.thepropertyteacher.co.uk, where you'll find loads more great property related resources, including free special reports to download and my best-selling series of ebooks, which includes the Successful Property Renovators Workshop, 63 common defects in investment property and how to spot them. And if you're just starting out in property, or if you want to grow your portfolio, you may be particularly interested in the Successful Property Investors Strategy Workshop, in which I'll take you through exactly how I started and built my property portfolio, starting literally with none of my own money, and how I built a portfolio of £2 million worth of property in just 4 years. And that was starting from scratch. I'll take you through everything that I did right so that you can copy me and do the same. And I'll also show you everything that I did wrong so that you can avoid the mistakes that I made, and so that you can progress in property and be far more successful far more quickly than I ever was. And this is based upon my own real life experience, and it took me about 4 years to actually work out how to do property investing properly. But in the 200 pages in the Successful Property Investors Strategy Workshop, I'm going to show you all of that 4 years knowledge condensed down so that you can use it immediately. And until next time, here's to successful property investing.